The Jewish State by Theodor Herzl. Chapter 4. Local Groups. Our Transmigration. Previous chapters explained only how the emigration scheme might be carried out without creating any economic disturbance. But so great a movement cannot take place without inevitably rousing many deep and powerful feelings. There are old customs, old memories that attach us to our homes. We have cradles, we have graves, and we alone know how Jewish hearts cling to the graves. Our cradles we shall carry with us. They hold our future, rosy and smiling. Our beloved graves we must abandon, and I think this abandonment will cost us more than any other sacrifice, but it must be so. Economic distress, political pressure, and social obloquy have already driven us from our homes and from our graves. We Jews are even now constantly shifting from place to place, a strong current actually carrying us westward over the sea to the United States, where our presence is also not desired. And where will our presence be desired, so long as we are a homeless nation? But we shall give a home to our people, and we shall give it not by dragging them ruthlessly out of their sustaining soil, but rather by transplanting them carefully to a better ground. Just as we wish to create new political and economic relations, so we shall preserve as sacred all of the past that is dear to our people's hearts. Hence a few suggestions must suffice, as this part of my scheme will most probably be condemned as visionary. Yet even this is possible and real, though it now appears as something vague and aimless. Organisation will make of it something rational. Emigration in groups. Our people should emigrate in groups of families and friends, but no man will be forced to join the particular group belonging to his former place of residence. Each will be able to journey in his chosen fashion, as soon as he has settled his affairs. Seeing that each man will pay his own expenses by rail and boat, he will naturally travel by whatever class suits him best. Possibly there will even be no subdivision for classes on board trains and boats, so as to avoid making the poor feel their position too keenly during their long journey. Though we are not exactly organising a pleasure trip, it is well to keep them in good humour on the way. None will travel in penury. On the other hand, all who desire to travel in luxurious ease will be able to follow their bent. Even under favourable circumstances, the movement may not touch certain classes of Jews for several years to come. The intervening period can therefore be employed in selecting the best modes of organising the journeys. Those who are well off can travel in parties if they wish, taking their personal friends and connections with them. Jews, with the exception of the richest, have, after all, very little intercourse with Christians. In some countries their acquaintance with them is confined to a few spongers, borrowers, and dependents. Of a better class of Christian they know nothing. The ghetto continues, though its walls are broken down. The middle classes will therefore make elaborate and careful preparations for departure. A group of travellers will be formed in each locality, large towns being divided into districts, with the group in each district who will communicate by means of representatives elected for the purpose. This division into districts needs not to be strictly adhered to. It is merely intended to alleviate the discomfort and homesickness of the poor during their journey outwards. Everybody is free to travel either alone or attached to any local group he prefers. The condition of travel, regulated according to classes, will apply to all alike. Any sufficiently numerous travelling party can charter a special train and special boat from the company. The company's housing agency will provide quarters for the poorest on their arrival. Later on, when more prosperous emigrants follow, their obvious need for lodgings on first landing will have been supplied by hotels built by private enterprise. Some of these more prosperous colonists will indeed have built their houses before becoming permanent settlers, so they will merely move from an old home into a new one. It would be an affront to our intelligent elements to point out everything that they have to do. Every man who attaches himself to the national idea will know how to spread it, and how to make it real within his sphere of influence. We shall first of all ask for the cooperation of our rabbis. Our rabbis. Every group will have its rabbi, travelling with his congregation. Local groups will afterwards form voluntarily about their rabbi, and each locality will have its spiritual leader. Our rabbis, on whom we especially call, will devote their energies to the service of our idea, and will inspire their congregations by preaching it from their pulpit. They will not need to address special meetings for the purpose. An appeal such as this may be uttered in the synagogue, and thus it must be done. For we feel our historic affinity only through the faith of our fathers, as we have long ago absorbed the languages of different nations to an ineradicable degree. The rabbis will receive communications regularly, both from society and company, and will announce and explain these to their congregations. Israel will pray for us and for itself. Representatives of the local groups. The local groups will appoint small committees of representative men under the rabbi's presidency for discussion and settlement of local affairs. Philanthropic institutions will be transferred by their local group, each institution remaining over there the property of the same set of people for whom it was originally founded. I think the old buildings should not be sold, but rather devoted to the assistance of indignant Christians in the forsaken towns. The local groups will receive compensation by obtaining free building sites and every facility for reconstruction in the new country. This transfer of philanthropic institutions will give another of those opportunities which occur at different points in my scheme for making an experiment in the service of humanity. Our present unsystematic private philanthropy does little good in proportion to the great expenditure it involves. But these institutions can and must form part of a system by which they will eventually supplement one another. In a new society, these organisations can be evolved out of our modern consciousness, and may be based on all previous social experiments. This matter is of great importance to us, on account of our large numbers of paupers. The weaker characters among us, discouraged by external pressure, spoilt by the soft-hearted charity of our rich men, easily sink until they take to begging. The society, supported by the local groups, will give greatest attention to popular education with regard to this particular. It will create a fruitful soil for many powers which now wither uselessly away. Whoever shows a genuine desire to work will be suitably employed. Beggars will not be endured. Whoever refuses to do anything as a free man will be sent to the workhouse. On the other hand, we shall not relegate the old to an almshouse. An almshouse is one of the cruellest charities which our stupid good nature ever invented. There our old people die out of pure shame and mortification. There they are already buried. But we will leave even to those who stand on the lowest grade of intelligence the consoling illusion of their utility in the world. We will provide easy tasks for those who are incapable of physical labour, for we must allow for diminished vitality in the poor of an already enfeebled generation. But future generations shall be dealt with otherwise. They shall be brought up in liberty, for a life of liberty. We will seek to bestow the moral salvation of work on men of every age and of every class, and thus our people will find their strength again in the land of the 7-hour day. Plans of the towns. The local groups will delegate their authorised representative to select sites for towns. In the distribution of land, every precaution will be taken to effect a careful transfer with due consideration for acquired rights. The local groups will have plans of the towns so that our people may know beforehand where they are to go, in which towns and in which houses they are to live. Comprehensive drafts of the building plans previously referred to will be distributed among the local groups. The principle of our administration will be strict centralisation of our local group's autonomy. In this way, the transfer will be accomplished with a minimum of pain. I do not imagine all this to be easier than it actually is. On the other hand, people must not imagine it to be more difficult than it is in reality. The departure of the middle classes. The middle classes will involuntarily be drawn into the outgoing current, for their sons will be officials of the society or employees of the company over there. Lawyers, doctors, technicians of every description, young business people, in fact, all Jews who are in search of opportunities, who now escape from oppression in their native country to earn a living in foreign lands, will assemble on a soil so full of fair promise. The daughters of the middle class will marry these ambitious men. One of them will send for his wife or fiancée to come out to him, another for his parents, brothers and sisters. Members of a new civilization marry young. This will promote general morality and ensure sturdiness in the new generation. And thus we shall have no delicate offspring of late marriages, children of fathers who spent their strength in the struggle for life. Every middle-class immigrant will draw more of his kind after him. The bravest will naturally get the best out of the new world. But there we seem undoubtedly to have touched on the crucial difficulty of my plan. Even if we succeed in opening a world discussion on the Jewish question in a serious manner, even if this debate led to a positive conclusion that the Jewish state were necessary to the world, even if the powers assisted us in acquiring the sovereignty of a strip of territory, how are we to transport masses of Jews without undue compulsion from their present homes to this new country? Their emigration is surely intended to be voluntary. The phenomenon of multitudes. Great exertions will hardly be necessary to spur on the movement. Anti-Semites provide the requisite impetus. They need only to do what they did before, and then they will create a desire to emigrate where it did not previously exist, and strengthen it where it existed before. Jews who now remain in anti-Semitic countries do so chiefly because even those among them who are most ignorant of history know that numerous changes of residence in bygone centuries never brought them any permanent good. Any land which welcomed the Jews today, and offered them even fewer advantages than that which the Jewish state would guarantee them, would immediately attract a great influx of our people. The poorest, who have nothing to lose, would drag themselves there. But I maintain that every man may ask himself whether I am not right, that the pressure weighing on us arouses a desire to emigrate, even among the prosperous strata of society. Now our poorest strata alone would suffice to found a state. These form the strongest human material for acquiring land, because a little despair is indispensable to the formation of a great undertaking. But when our desperadoes increase the value of the land by their presence and by their labour they expend on it, they make it at the same time increasingly attractive as a place of settlement for the people who are better off. Higher and yet higher strata will feel tempted to go over. The expedition of the first and poorest settlers will be conducted by company and society conjointly, and will probably be additionally supported by existing emigration and Zionist societies. How may a number of people be directed to a particular spot without being given express orders to go there? There are certain Jewish benefactors on a large scale who try to alleviate the suffering of the Jews by Zionist experiments. To them this problem also presented itself, and they thought to solve it by giving the emigrants money or means of employment. Thus the philanthropist said, "We pay these people to go there." Such a procedure is utterly wrong, and all the money in the world will not achieve its purpose. On the other hand, the company will say, "We shall not pay them, we shall let them pay us. We shall merely offer them some inducements to go." A fanciful illustration will make my meaning more explicit. One of those philanthropists, who we shall call the Baron, and myself both wished to get a crowd of people onto the plain of Longchamps near Paris, on a hot Sunday afternoon. The Baron, by promising them 10 francs each, will, for 200,000 francs, bring about 20,000 perspiring and miserable people, who will curse him for having given them so much annoyance. Whereas, I will offer these 200,000 francs as a prize for the swiftest racehorse, and then I shall have to put up barriers to keep the people off Longchamps. They will pay to go in 1 franc, 5 francs, 20 francs. The consequence will be that I shall get the 500,000 people out there. The President of the Republic will drive out à la demande, and the crowds will enjoy and amuse themselves. Most of them will think an agreeable walk in the open air in spite of heat and dust. And I shall have made my 200,000 francs, about $1 million in entrance money and taxes on gaming. I shall get the same people out there, whenever I like, but the Baron will not on any account. I will give a more serious illustration of the phenomenon of multitudes, where they are earning a livelihood. Let any man attempt to cry through the streets of a town, "Whoever is willing to stand all day long through a winter's terrible cold, through summer's tormenting heat, in an iron hall exposed on all sides, there to address every passer-by and to offer him fancy wares, or fish, or fruit, will receive 2 florins, or 4 francs, or something similar." How many people would go to the hall? How many days would they hold out when hunger drove them there? And if they held out, what energy would they display in trying to persuade passers-by to buy fish, fruit, and fancy wares? We shall set about it in a different way. In places where trade is active, and these places we shall easily discover, since we ourselves direct trade whithersoever we wish. In these places we shall build large halls, and call them markets. These halls might be worse built, and more unwholesome than those above mentioned, and yet people would stream towards them. But we shall use our best efforts, and we shall build them better, and make them more beautiful than the first. And the people to whom we had promised nothing, because we cannot promise anything without deceiving them, these excellent, keen businessmen will gaily create more active commercial intercourse. They will harangue the buyers unweariedly. They will stand on their feet and scarcely think of fatigue. They will hurry off at dawn, so as to be the first on the spot. They'll form unions, cartels, anything to continue breadwinning undisturbed. And if they find at the end of the day that all their hard work has produced only 1 florin, 50 kreutzers, or 3 francs, or something similar, they'll yet look forward hopefully to the next day, which may perhaps bring them better luck. We have given them hope. Would anyone ask whence the demand comes to create the market? Is it really necessary to tell them again? I pointed out that by means of the system assistance par le travail, the return could be increased 15-fold. 1 million would produce 15 millions, and 1,000 millions 15,000 millions. This may be the case on a small scale. Is it so on a large one? Capital surely yields a return diminishing in inverse ratio to its own growth. Inactive and inert capital yields this diminishing return, but active capital brings in a marvellously increased return. Herein lies the social question. Am I stating a fact? I call on the richest Jews as witness of my veracity. Why do they carry on so many different industries? Why do they send men to work underground and to raise coal amid terrible dangers for meagre pay? I cannot imagine this to be pleasant, even for the owners of the mines, for I do not believe that capitalists are heartless, and I do not pretend that I believe it. My desire is not to accentuate, but to smooth differences. Is it necessary to illustrate the phenomenon of multitudes, and their concentration on a particular spot, by reference to pious pilgrimages? I do not want to hurt anyone's religious sensibility by words which may be wrongly interpreted. I shall merely refer quite briefly to the Mohammedan pilgrimages to Mecca, the Catholic pilgrimages to Lourdes, and many other spots whence men return comforted by their faith, and the Holy Hock at Trier. Thus we shall also create a centre for the deep religious needs of our people. Our ministers will understand us first, and be with us in this. We shall let every man find salvation over there, in his own particular way. Above and before all, we shall make room for the immortal band of our free thinkers, who are continually making new conquests for humanity. No more force will be exercised on anyone than is necessary for the preservation of state and order, and the requisite force will not be arbitrarily defined by one or more shifting authorities. It will be fixed by iron laws. Now, if the illustrations I gave make people draw the inference that a multitude can only be temporarily attracted to centres of faith, of business, or of amusement, The reply to their objection is simple. Whereas one of these objects by itself would certainly only attract the masses, all these centres of attraction combined will be calculated permanently to hold and satisfy them. For all these centres together form a single, great, long-sought object, which our people have always longed to attain, for which it has kept itself alive, for which it has been kept alive by external pressure, a free home. When the movement commences, we shall draw some men after us and let others follow. Others again will be swept into the current, and the last will be thrust after us. These last hesitating settlers will be the worst off, both here and there. But the first, who will go over with faith, enthusiasm and courage, will have the best positions. Our human material. There are more mistaken notions abroad concerning Jews than concerning any other people, and we have become so depressed and discouraged by historic suffering that we ourselves repeat and believe these mistakes. One of these is that we have an immoderate love of business. Now it is well known that whenever we are permitted to take part in the rising of classes, we give up our business as soon as possible. The great majority of Jewish businessmen give their sons a superior education, hence the so-called Judaizing of all intellectual professions. But even in economically feebler grades of society, our love of trade is not so predominant as generally supposed. In the eastern countries of Europe, there are a great number of Jews who are not traders and who are not afraid of hard work either. The Society of Jews will be in a position to prepare scientifically accurate statistics of our human forces. The new tasks and prospects that await our people in the new country will satisfy our present handicraftsmen, and will transform many present small traders into manual workers. A peddler who travels about the country with a heavy pack on his back is not so contented as his persecutors imagine. The 7-hour day will convert all of his kind into workmen. They are good, misunderstood people who now suffer perhaps more severely than any others. The Society of Jews will, moreover, busy itself from the outset with their training as artisans. Their love of gain will be encouraged in a healthy manner. Jews are of a thrifty and adaptable disposition, and are qualified for any means of earning a living, and will therefore suffice to make small trading unremunerative, to cause even present peddlers to give up altogether. This could be brought about, for example, by encouraging large department stores which provide all necessities of life. These general stores are already crushing small trading in large cities. In a land of new civilization, they will absolutely prevent its existence. The establishment of these stores is further advantageous, because it makes the country immediately habitable for people who require more refined necessities of life. Habits is a reference to the little habits and comforts of the ordinary man in keeping with the serious nature of this pamphlet. I think it is in keeping, and, moreover, very important. For these little habits are the 1,001 finite delicate threads which together go to make up an unbreakable rope. Here certain limited notions must be set aside. Whoever has seen anything of the world knows that just as these little daily customs can be easily transplanted everywhere, the technical contrivances of our day, which this scheme intends to employ in the service of humanity, have heretofore been principally used for our little habits. There are English hotels in Egypt, and on the mountain crests in Switzerland, Vienna cafes in South Africa, French theatres in Russia, German operas in America, and the best Bavarian beers in Paris. When we journey out of Egypt again, we shall not leave the flesh pots behind. Every man will find his customers again in the local groups, but they will be better, more beautiful, and more agreeable than before.